Harmony Prime was the kind of neutral space station that made diplomatic neutrality look like a customer service job. Sterile, beige, and somehow managing to be both overcrowded and soul-crushingly empty at the same time. Jake wiped his hands on his maintenance coveralls and checked his diagnostic tablet for the third time. The atmospheric recycling unit in Section C was acting up again, which meant another thrilling afternoon of explaining to alien dignitaries why their air smelled slightly metallic. "Remind me why we took this contract?" Riley asked, reviewing safety protocols on her own tablet while keeping one eye on the Zephyrian delegation that had just arrived for some kind of cultural exchange nonsense. "Because the pay is decent, the work is straightforward, and nobody bothers us," Jake replied, adjusting his tool belt with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been fixing things that aliens broke for the better part of 5 years. "Plus, you said it would be educational to work around different species," Riley snorted. "I said it would be educational to observe interspecies diplomacy. I didn't sign up for a front-row seat to the galaxy's most pretentious dinner theater." The Zephyrian delegation was exactly the kind of self-important political circus that made Jake grateful he worked in maintenance instead of customer service. They moved through the station's diplomatic quarter like they owned the place, which, technically, they sort of did during their cultural presentation period. Ambassador Krix'tel led the group with the kind of calculated arrogance that suggested he practiced being condescending in front of mirrors. "Ah, the maintenance staff," Ambassador Krix'tel announced, as he noticed Jake and Riley running diagnostics near the central assembly area. "How convenient. You can serve as demonstration subjects for our cultural education presentation." Jake looked up from his atmospheric readings with the expression of someone whose day had just taken a turn for the worse. "Sorry, Ambassador, but we're actually working. Maybe you could find some volunteers from the diplomatic corps." "Nonsense," Krix'tel dismissed with a wave of his 4 chitinous arms. "This will be educational for you primitive mammals. You can learn about superior Zephyrian cultural practices." Riley exchanged a look with Jake that conveyed approximately 17 different kinds of annoyance. "Ambassador, we appreciate the offer, but we have safety protocols to follow. We can't participate in unscheduled activities while we're on duty." "Safety protocols?" Krix'tel's laugh sounded like a garbage disposal eating silverware. "You're maintenance workers. Your safety protocols amount to, try not to die while cleaning up after your betters." The diplomatic quarter went quiet. Even by galactic standards, that was an impressively stupid thing to say to people who had access to life support systems. Jake felt something shift in his chest. Not anger, exactly, but the kind of calm that usually preceded very poor decision-making. "Look, Ambassador," Jake said with the patient tone he reserved for explaining simple concepts to complicated people. "We're just here to do our jobs. Maybe you could demonstrate your cultural practices on someone who actually volunteered?" "But this is perfect!" Krix'tel exclaimed, warming to his theme. "Zephyrian strength compared to human frailty. A practical demonstration of species superiority." Before either human could object, Krix'tel had grabbed Riley's arm with one of his blade-tipped appendages. What happened next would later be analyzed by xenobiologists as the moment everyone learned the difference between human politeness and human capability. The ambassador's idea of a harmless cultural demonstration involved showcasing Zephyrian physical superiority by lifting a fragile human above his head. Unfortunately, his understanding of human anatomy was based on outdated diplomatic files that described humans as delicate mammals requiring careful handling. Riley hit the deck hard. The sound of her wrist breaking was audible across the diplomatic quarter. The silence that followed was the kind that preceded either apologies or international incidents. Ambassador Krix'tel looked down at Riley with the expression of someone who'd just realized he might have made a tactical error. "Oops," he said, which was possibly the worst possible choice of words in the history of interspecies relations. Jake knelt beside Riley, checking her vitals with the kind of professional efficiency that came from 5 years of emergency response training. Her wrist was definitely broken, probably in 2 places, and she was unconscious from hitting her head on the deck plating. "Riley?" Jake called softly, getting no response. He checked her pulse, breathing, pupil response. Everything suggested a concussion, along with the obvious fracture. "I'm sure she's fine," Ambassador Krix'tel said with the casual dismissal of someone whose species had never actually bothered to learn about human physiology. Humans are remarkably resilient for such primitive creatures. Jake stood up slowly. Very slowly. The kind of slow that suggested someone was taking time to think through their options very carefully. "She needs medical attention," he said with the calm that maintenance workers used when explaining that yes, the reactor really was about to explode, and yes, they should probably evacuate now. Of course, Krix'tel agreed magnanimously. Though I hardly think a minor tumble requires such concern. Zephyrian younglings routinely endure worse during play activities. Jake looked at the ambassador. He looked at Riley, unconscious on the deck with a visibly deformed wrist. He looked around the diplomatic quarter at the various alien dignitaries who were watching the scene with the kind of uncomfortable fascination usually reserved for traffic accidents. "Medical team to Section C," he said, into his comm unit with professional calm. "We have an unconscious human with head trauma and probable fractures." The response was immediate. Within minutes, the station's medical team had Riley on a stretcher and were rushing her to the infirmary. The medics, a mixed crew of various species, took one look at her injuries and began the kind of frantic activity that suggested this was significantly more serious than a minor tumble. "Ambassador Krix'tel," Jake said, once the medical team had departed with Riley. "I'd like to have a private conversation with you." The request hit the diplomatic quarter like a small diplomatic bomb. Several species didn't even have private conversations, and those that did rarely involved them in formal diplomatic settings. The Zephyrian ambassador looked puzzled but pleased, apparently interpreting this as some kind of human diplomatic protocol. "Ah, yes," Krix'tel said with obvious satisfaction. "A formal grievance procedure. How wonderfully primitive. Yes, I suppose we should address this matter through proper channels." The various alien dignitaries began organizing themselves for what they assumed would be a standard diplomatic discussion about cultural misunderstandings and appropriate compensation for accidental injuries. Several species were already taking notes for their reports on human conflict resolution procedures. "Excellent," Jake said with the kind of smile that made experienced emergency responders quietly check the locations of the nearest exits. "Let's go somewhere we can discuss this properly." Ambassador Krix'tel agreed enthusiastically, apparently under the impression that he was about to receive a lesson in human diplomatic traditions. The other species watched with academic interest as the two figures headed toward one of the station's private meeting rooms. None of them had ever seen an angry human before. They'd met polite humans, professional humans, even occasionally frustrated humans. But never a human who'd been pushed past the point where customer service training and professional courtesy were sufficient to address the situation. As Jake and Ambassador Krix'tel disappeared into the private meeting room, the assembled alien dignitaries settled in to wait for what they assumed would be a standard diplomatic resolution. Some even began taking bets on how long the formal complaint process would take. They were about to learn that when humans asked for privacy, it wasn't always for the reasons that appeared in the diplomatic handbook. And somewhere in the medical bay, Riley was being treated for injuries that the station's medical staff were having trouble categorizing as accidental. The private meeting room on Harmony Prime had been designed for sensitive diplomatic discussions. Soundproof walls, comfortable seating, and a neutral atmosphere conducive to productive dialogue between civilized species. It had not been designed for what Ambassador Krix'tel was about to experience, which was a comprehensive education in why humans had survived long enough to reach the stars. "Now then," Krix'tel began with the satisfied air of someone about to deliver a lecture on proper diplomatic procedure. "I understand you wish to file a formal complaint regarding the minor incident with your female. I assure you, compensation can be arranged according to standard protocols for—" Jake hit him with a chair. Not metaphorically, literally. Jake picked up one of the diplomatic meeting chairs, a solid piece of furniture designed to support beings weighing up to 400 pounds, and brought it down on Krix'tel's head with the kind of precision that suggested he'd given this considerable thought during the 30-second walk to the meeting room. The sound of chitinous exoskeleton meeting reinforced furniture echoed through the soundproof chamber, like a percussion section having an argument with reality. "The thing about humans," Jake said conversationally as Krix'tel staggered backward, apparently trying to process the fact that diplomatic discussions didn't usually begin with improvised weapons, "is that we're really good at using tools. To demonstrate this point, Jake dismantled the meeting table with the efficiency of someone whose job involved taking things apart and putting them back together. Except instead of putting anything back together, he was using the component parts to systematically disassemble Ambassador Krix'tel. "This is highly irregular," Krix'tel protested, attempting to defend himself with formal diplomatic objections, while Jake explained the finer points of human problem-solving using a table leg as a visual aid. "You know what else is irregular?" Jake replied, demonstrating an advanced technique involving leverage and the ambassador's secondary elbow joint. "Breaking my girlfriend's wrist because you wanted to show off." The realization that this wasn't a diplomatic discussion, but rather a very personal educational experience, hit Krix'tel approximately the same time that Jake's improvised weapon collection expanded to include various pieces of the ambassador's own exoskeleton. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarter, several alien species were beginning to realize that the sounds coming from the meeting room didn't match their understanding of human conflict resolution procedures. "Is it normal for human diplomatic discussions to include that much percussive accompaniment?" asked cultural observer Vextal of the Centaurian delegation, whose species had evolved particularly sensitive hearing. "Perhaps it's a rhythmic negotiation technique," suggested academic specialist Zexnara, frantically consulting her notes on human cultural practices. "Some species use musical elements in formal dispute resolution." The sounds from the meeting room were indeed rhythmic, but they had less to do with music and more to do with the steady tempo of Jake explaining his philosophical differences with the ambassador using interpretive demolition. Security Chief Nexvok, whose job involved maintaining order during diplomatic functions, was reviewing station protocols for handling discussion-related disturbances, when his sensors registered what could only be described as a small-scale construction project being run in reverse. "Should we intervene?" asked Lieutenant Yextal, whose species' understanding of human behavior was based entirely on their interactions with customer service representatives and maintenance staff. "The meeting room is soundproof and officially designated for private discussions," Security Chief Nexvok replied with the careful tone of someone whose job security depended on not interfering with diplomatic immunity. "According to regulations, we cannot intervene in formal negotiations without a specific request for assistance. But the structural stress readings are within acceptable parameters for diplomatic furniture," Security Chief Nexvok interrupted, apparently deciding that whatever was happening in that room was somebody else's problem until it became officially his problem. In the xenobiology department, Dr. Kexavala was having the kind of academic breakthrough that usually required years of research and significant funding. The station's internal monitors, designed to ensure the safety of diplomatic personnel, were providing real-time data on human physical capabilities that contradicted 60 years of scientific literature. "This is impossible," she muttered, watching readings that suggested a single human was generating enough kinetic energy to demolish a small building while maintaining perfect cardiovascular stability. "According to our data, humans are supposed to be fragile mammals with limited physical capabilities." "What if our data is wrong?" suggested research assistant Texmora with the kind of dangerous academic curiosity that led to either Nobel Prizes or ethics committee investigations. "Our data can't be wrong. It's based on extensive observation of human diplomatic personnel, trade representatives, and service industry workers." Dr. Kexvala paused, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence as a terrible possibility occurred to her. Unless what? Unless we've never actually seen angry humans before, only polite ones. The implications of this possibility hit the xenobiology department like a small academic meteor. If humans had been deliberately concealing their true capabilities behind customer service smiles and diplomatic courtesy, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about Earth's species was catastrophically incomplete. Back in the meeting room, Jake was providing Ambassador Krix'tel with a comprehensive demonstration of why humans had developed such elaborate social conventions around politeness and conflict avoidance. It turned out that when those conventions were removed, the underlying machinery was significantly more robust than galactic civilization had assumed. "I want you, to think about something," Jake said, pausing in his educational presentation to ensure he had the ambassador's full attention. "Every human you've ever met, every diplomat, every trade representative, every customer service worker, has been choosing to be nice to you. Krix'tel, who was discovering that Zephyrian exoskeletons were not as impact-resistant as his species had assumed, made a sound that roughly translated to, "Oh, Void, take me, what have we done?" "That's right," Jake confirmed, apparently fluent in the universal language of dawning comprehension. "We've been polite because we wanted to be polite, not because we had to be." The station's security sensors chose this moment to register that the meeting room's furniture count had dropped to 0. Its structural integrity was experiencing rapid decompression, and one of the occupants was experiencing what the computers could only classify as aggressive disassembly. "Sir," Lieutenant Krix'tel reported to Security Chief Nexvok with growing urgency, "the human appears to be redecorating." Redecorating? The meeting room no longer contains any furniture, fittings, or Ambassador Krix'tel in their original configurations. Security Chief Nexvok made the kind of sound that suggested his understanding of human maintenance workers was undergoing aggressive revision. "Assemble a response team, full tactical gear." "Sir, are we sure our weapons will be effective against that?" Lieutenant Krix'tel gestured toward the readings that suggested the human was treating Ambassador Krix'tel like a particularly challenging home improvement project. "Our weapons are rated for beings up to Class 7 threat levels. Humans are classified as Class 2. What if the classification is wrong? Security Chief Nexvok stared at his tactical assessments, which were painting a picture of human capabilities that made Class 7 beings look like enthusiastic amateurs. Then we're about to find out what happens when you bring adequate firepower to an inadequate understanding of the target. The meeting room door opened, and Jake emerged with the casual satisfaction of someone who just completed a routine maintenance task. He was carrying what appeared to be Ambassador Krix'tel's spinal column, which he examined with professional interest before setting it aside. "Well," Jake announced to the assembled diplomatic quarter, his voice carrying the kind of calm that suggested he was open to reasonable discussion. That was educational. He looked around at the various alien dignitaries, security personnel, and academic observers who were staring at him with expressions ranging from academic fascination to existential terror. "Anyone else want to discuss what happened to Riley?" The Galactic Communication Network had been designed to handle the peaceful exchange of information between civilized species. It had not been designed to handle 17 different alien governments simultaneously broadcasting variations of "Holy Void. The maintenance humans are going to kill us all," in 43 languages while uploading security footage that broke several laws of physics and at least 2 workplace safety regulations. Within 4 hours of Jake's cultural exchange with Ambassador Krix'tel, the footage had achieved something previously thought impossible, going viral across multiple species that didn't share common sensory organs. The diplomatic incident was being analyzed by beings who experienced reality through sonar, electromagnetic fields, and interpretive dance. "This changes everything," announced Dr. Vextala of the Centaurian Institute for Xenobiological Studies during an emergency broadcast that was simultaneously being watched, felt, and somehow tasted by billions of sentient beings across the galaxy. "We have fundamentally misclassified the human species. They are not maintenance workers and customer service representatives. They are apex predators masquerading as facilities management." The footage played again in slow motion, each frame dissected by experts who were rapidly coming to the same terrifying conclusion. Humans were really, really good at dismantling things, and they'd been hiding it behind name tags and employee handbooks. The economic implications hit first, cascading through galactic markets like a financial neutron bomb. The Proxima exchange closed for the first time in recorded history after human maintenance contracts were simultaneously canceled by 23 different corporations. The panic selling had started when someone pointed out that humans had unrestricted access to life support systems, waste management, and atmospheric processing across half the galaxy. "They're everywhere," reported financial analyst Kex Mora during the emergency session of the Galactic Trade Council, her voice carrying the hollow tone of someone whose portfolio had just been personally insulted by reality. "Every major installation, every trade hub, every diplomatic facility. We've been employing them to fix our most critical infrastructure. And they've been doing excellent work," added Infrastructure Coordinator Nexvok with the bewildered tone of someone whose understanding of employee relations was undergoing aggressive revision. Customer satisfaction ratings are consistently high. No security incidents. Exemplary safety records. Because they weren't trying to hurt us, Council Director Krix'tel realized with growing horror. They were just doing their jobs. The academic response was swift and overwhelming. Universities across the galaxy began publishing emergency papers with titles like Human Emotional States and Their Tactical Implications, Facility Maintenance as Unconscious Infiltration Strategy, and Customer Service Smiles, a Mask for Evolutionary Predators. Professor Texavara of the Altarian War College was reviewing footage of Jake's impromptu furniture demonstration for the 15th time when the real implications hit her. "Look at the tool selection," she announced to her emergency seminar on human resource management, a military perspective. "He didn't bring weapons. He improvised them from available materials with perfect efficiency." "Is that significant?" asked her research assistant, whose species had evolved beyond physical conflict approximately 3 million years ago. "It means every human in the galaxy is a walking weapons platform. They don't need to carry armaments. They can create them from anything in their environment." Professor Texavara paused the footage on Jake, examining Ambassador Krix'tel's spinal column with professional interest. "They've been casually accessing our most secure facilities for decades, not as infiltrators, but as invited guests." The military analysis was even more disturbing. Defense Coordinator Yexnoth of the Galactic Security Force was reviewing incident reports with the kind of methodical horror that came with discovering fundamental flaws in galactic defense strategy. "Human maintenance personnel have unrestricted access to military installations across 17 star systems," he reported to the Emergency Defense Council. "They repair our weapons systems, maintain our shield generators, and service our communication arrays." "Are you suggesting they've been gathering intelligence?" asked Admiral Vexcol with the careful tone of someone hoping for reassuring news, but expecting a strategic apocalypse. "I'm suggesting they haven't needed to gather intelligence. We've been giving them detailed schematics and operational parameters as part of their routine work orders." Defense Coordinator Yexnoth gestured at reports that painted a picture of unconscious infiltration on a galactic scale. "They know exactly how everything works, because we've been paying them to keep it working." The realization that humans had been accidentally infiltrating galactic infrastructure while just trying to earn an honest living was spreading panic through military commands across 40 systems. Emergency protocols were activated, security clearances were revoked, and several defense analysts filed for early retirement. Meanwhile, in the medical bay of Harmony Prime, Riley was experiencing the kind of slow awakening that came with head trauma and significant pain medication. The first thing she noticed was that her wrist was in a regeneration cast. The second thing she noticed was the unusual amount of armed security outside her medical pod. "What's all the fuss about?" she asked medical technician Dexnala, whose species had evolved specifically to handle medical emergencies, but not to explain galactic political incidents. "Your partner had a discussion with Ambassador Krix'tel," medical technician Dexnala explained with the careful tone of someone delivering news that might cause additional trauma. "It escalated." "Escalated how?" "The ambassador required extensive medical reconstruction, and possibly some philosophical counseling about the nature of human diplomacy." Riley processed this information with the clarity that came from 5 years of working alongside Jake in high-stress maintenance situations. "Oh no. How escalated are we talking about?" "Your partner is currently designated as a walking diplomatic incident by the Galactic Security Council. There are 3 different species demanding his extradition, 17 requesting his immediate deportation, and at least 1 that has declared him a biological weapon with employee benefits." "That sounds about right," Riley said with the resigned tone of someone whose boyfriend had a tendency to take things personally. "Is Jake okay?" "Physically, yes. Psychologically, he appears to be treating the situation as a routine customer service complaint that got slightly out of hand." The understatement of the millennium was interrupted by the arrival of Station Commander Vex Kala, whose job had evolved from diplomatic facility management to prevent interspecies war caused by maintenance worker in the span of a single afternoon. Miss Riley, Commander Vexkala began with the careful courtesy of someone addressing a potential diplomatic explosive device. I need to inform you that your partner's actions have triggered what can only be described as a galaxy-wide reevaluation of human-alien relations. He fixed something, didn't he? Riley asked with the weary recognition of someone who'd seen this pattern before, though admittedly not on this scale. He fixed Ambassador Krix'tel's attitude problem, Commander Vexkala confirmed. Very thoroughly. The ambassador is currently in intensive care, experiencing what our physicians describe as acute perspective adjustment syndrome. And now everyone's panicking because they realize that maintenance workers are actually capable of maintenance in the aggressive sense of the word. Riley concluded with the insight that came from understanding both her boyfriend and galactic bureaucracy. That's surprisingly accurate, Commander Vexkala admitted. The current working theory is that humans have been unconsciously infiltrating galactic civilization under the guise of providing essential services. Riley laughed, which was apparently not the response Commander Vexkala had been expecting. We weren't infiltrating anything. We were just doing our jobs, but I guess if you give someone unrestricted access to your most important systems and then treat them badly. She shrugged with her uninjured shoulder. Well, that's a customer service problem waiting to happen. The casual mention of customer service problems, in the context of Jake's comprehensive redesign of Ambassador Krix'tel, sent another wave of panic through the galactic communication networks. Emergency sessions were called, regulations were hastily rewritten, and several civilizations began reviewing their employment contracts with human personnel. And in a holding cell designed for diplomatic incidents, Jake was calmly filling out an incident report, treating the whole situation as a workplace accident that had gotten slightly out of hand. The form had a section for property damage, which he'd filled out as moderate, and a section for injury sustained, which he'd marked as none. Under corrective actions taken, he'd written, problem resolved. Recommend improved training for diplomatic personnel regarding appropriate workplace behavior. The fact that a human could dismantle an alien ambassador and then file proper paperwork about it was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called to address what historians would later refer to as the human situation, but what Riley privately thought of as Jake having a really bad day at work. She sat in the witness chair facing representatives from 47 different civilizations, her wrist still in a regeneration cast, watching aliens try to process the fact that their maintenance staff had accidentally conquered them. Miss Riley, began Council Director Zextal with the careful tone of someone addressing a potentially explosive diplomatic device. We need to understand the true nature of human capabilities. Are your species' maintenance workers actually covert military operatives? Riley looked around the assembly chamber, noting the increased security, the nervous energy radiating from beings who'd just discovered their janitors were apex predators, and the way everyone kept glancing at Jake like he might spontaneously disassemble the furniture. No, she said simply. We're exactly what we said we were. Jake fixes things. I handle interspecies customer relations. We're just really, really good at our jobs. But the incident with Ambassador Krix'tel. Was Jake fixing a problem? Riley interrupted with the patient tone she used when explaining obvious things to difficult customers. The ambassador hurt me. That's a problem. Jake solved it. Academic specialist Vexinara leaned forward with scholarly intensity. Are you saying that humans routinely respond to interpersonal conflicts with systematic physical dismantlement? Only when someone hurts our people, Riley replied matter-of-factly. It's called pack bonding. Pretty standard mammalian behavior, actually. We just happen to be really good at it. The silence that followed was broken by Counselor Nexveth of the Altarian delegation. So when humans form emotional attachments, we tend to take threats to those attachments personally, Riley confirmed. Hence why we usually try very hard to be polite and non-threatening. We know what happens when we're not. Dr. Keksavala of the Xenobiology Institute was frantically taking notes. You've been deliberately concealing your capabilities? Not concealing. Managing. Riley gestured around the chamber with her good hand. Look, we've been part of galactic civilization for 60 years. We've seen how you react to anything. That scares you. So we smile, we say please and thank you, we fix your problems efficiently and cheerfully, and we try very hard not to remind you that we're persistence predators who spent 2 million years hunting things to death on a planet that actively tried to kill us. The revelation hit the chamber like a diplomatic meteorite. Several species began rapid consultations with their home governments, apparently reassessing every interaction they'd ever had with human personnel. So, the polite customer service, Council Director Krix'tel began. Is us being nice because we want to be nice, Riley finished. Not because we have to be. There's a difference. Commander Vexakala of Station Security cleared his throat nervously. What would it take for humans to continue being nice? Riley considered this with the expression of someone calculating the complexity of a customer service solution. Well, not hurting us is a good start. Treating us with basic respect tends to work well. And maybe acknowledging that we know what we're doing instead of assuming we're primitive mammals who stumbled into space by accident. And if someone does hurt humans? Then you get Jake, Riley said simply. And Jake fixes problems very thoroughly. The economic implications were staggering. Trade Representative Yexkol pulled up holographic displays showing the scope of human involvement in galactic infrastructure. According to these reports, human personnel are integrated into virtually every major installation in known space. If we were to lose access to their services, you'd have a galaxy-wide maintenance crisis, Riley agreed cheerfully. We're very good at keeping things running. But now we know you're also very good at stopping things from running, added military analyst Nextore, with the tone of someone whose strategic assumptions had been fed through a wood chipper. Same skill set, Riley pointed out. Understanding how something works means understanding how to make it not work. It's just a matter of applied maintenance. The phrase applied maintenance triggered immediate alerts across galactic military networks as defense analysts realized that every human technician was essentially a walking systems vulnerability with a customer service smile. What do you propose? Council Director Krix'tel asked with the resigned tone of someone whose day job had just become significantly more complicated. Riley's smile carried the kind of professional enthusiasm that made experienced diplomats reach for their emergency medication. Well, obviously the current classification system isn't working out for anyone, so maybe we need new job categories. The solution, when it came, was elegantly simple and terrifyingly practical. Humans would become the galaxy's official problem solvers. Species could hire them when they needed something fixed, whether that was a malfunctioning reactor, a diplomatic crisis, or an attitude problem that required aggressive adjustment. 6 months later, Jake received his official promotion to Director of Aggressive Maintenance, while Riley became Chief Human Liaison for Species Who Need Attitude Adjustments. Their business cards included the disclaimer, "Results guaranteed or your problems permanently resolved." You know what the funny part is? Riley said, reviewing their appointment schedule in their new office aboard what was now designated as Human Problem Solving Station Prime. What's that? Jake asked, not looking up from his maintenance manual, which now included sections on diplomatic disassembly techniques and customer service through superior firepower. We just wanted to finish our shift and go home. Now we're responsible for teaching an entire galaxy about human emotional ranges and appropriate workplace behavior. Jake considered this while reviewing a service request from the Centaurian Trade Federation regarding aggressive negotiation consultation for a territorial dispute. Could be worse. At least now when I fix problems, it's officially part of my job description. Their first major contract came from the Zephyrian government itself, requesting cultural sensitivity training for their diplomatic corps. The irony was not lost on anyone, but Jake's customer satisfaction ratings remained consistently high. Harmony Prime Station to Director Jake, came the communication from their old workplace. We have a situation in Section C. Equipment malfunction, with aggressive diplomatic overtones. Standard maintenance insufficient. Jake checked his schedule with the satisfaction of someone whose expertise was finally being properly appreciated. Tell them I'll be there Tuesday, and remind them about the new safety protocols. The new safety protocols were elegantly simple. Priority 1 was, do not anger the humans. Priority 2 was, if you have angered the humans, apologize immediately and sincerely. Priority 3 was, If apologies are insufficient, prepare for aggressive problem resolution. Same time next week? Riley asked as Jake gathered his tools, a collection that now officially included diplomatic adjustment implements alongside traditional maintenance equipment. Looks like it, Jake replied, humming contentedly as he planned his next customer consultation. And across the galaxy, 47 different civilizations quietly implemented new workplace policies, ensuring that their human personnel were treated with the kind of respect and consideration that prevented maintenance calls from becoming extinction events.